Why, yes, I believe we shall.
Oh, I got a live one here.
Welcome to Shane Plays Geek Talk Radio, live Geek Talk Radio out of Little Rock, Arkansas. We are on, and I'll explain this a little more in a second. We're temporarily on 99.5 instead of our normal frequency of 96.5. So if you're like, what the heck is going on? I will explain more about it here in a second in our housekeeping notes. But this is Shane Plays Radio. It's Geek Talk Radio live out of Little Rock. We also stream online, go out as a podcast, and play on Krypton Radio a week delayed. So plenty of ways to find us. Got a great show for you today. I'll tell you about it more here in a moment. But first, a couple of housekeeping notes that I always like to get out of the way at the beginning of the show so we can get into the fun stuff. First of all, you can always go to shaneplays.com, and there is a show notes post up right now. It's the main post on the blog at shaneplays.com. And if you go there, the notes from the news items and the guest and everything that we're going to have today, there's links there for all that stuff. So if you missed something, and you're like, what were they talking about? Or you just happen to want to know more, go to shaneplays.com, and it should say like October 17th, 2015 show notes. And if that's been replaced by the podcast version, it'll just say, podcast of, October 17th show or something like that. So you can always call in. This is live talk radio. This is Geek Talk Radio. It does go out as a podcast later, but it's first and foremost a live Geek Talk Radio show. And you can call in at 501-823-0965, or you can tweet me at Shane Plays. That's Shane like my name, Shane, and plays like I like to play stuff. So Shane Plays. That's 501-823-0965, or tweet me at Shane Plays. Also, we do have sponsors. Blessed and just so appreciative to have sponsors to help with the show. But this is also kind of a new way that I'm trying to support talk radio, Geek Talk Radio. I'm also on Patreon. So if anybody likes the idea of Geek Talk Radio and wants to support it, then you can go to patreon.com/ShanePlays, and you can pledge for as little as $1 per show. Now, you don't have to. I want to make that clear. It's totally voluntary. You don't have to pay for the show, but if it's just something that you want to happen to support, then I sure do appreciate it, and that's at patreon.com/ShanePlays. Not last, but another important note is that we do always go out as a podcast. Usually tonight on Saturday or by Sunday evening, I'll get the podcast out, and that'll be at shaneplays.com. It'll also be on iTunes and Stitcher and other fine podcast directories. And then we're also carried a week delayed, and Gene Turnbow from Krypton Radio is working on getting it live so our Krypton Radio listeners can listen live and call in and all that stuff. But go to kryptonradio.com, and last week's show is actually playing there right now. Now, the temporary station change I was talking about, due to Ouachita Baptist football, from now through November 14th, and for the last couple of weeks, we're on live on sister station 99.5 FM Faith Talk. And then we will play delayed tomorrow on Sunday at once again at 1 o'clock on 96.5 The Answer, our normal station. So if you're hearing this on Sunday on 96.5, it's pre-recorded. Don't try to call in or anything like that. If you're hearing it today, right now, live on Faith Talk, this is a temporary situation. So, it's a little bit different show than normally is on Faith Talk. Hope you enjoy it. So what we're going to do now, I've got a guest with me. I've got Steve Chenault. Say hi, Steve.
How you doing?
Yeah, doing good. Thanks for being here. Steve is with Troll Lord Games, Little Rock's very own Troll Lord Games, and they publish role-playing games, not the only one of which, but one we'll be talking about today is called Castles Crusades. So, and we'll be talking about the role-playing game industry in general and many other exciting, fun things. So, before we get into all that, though, want to, hey, Zach, are our hardworking news guys, are they at it today? Do we have them? Look, these guys work on Saturdays, Steve. Can you believe that?
That's not right.
I know. They love it so much. So they're in there working hard, feeding me news, even as we talk. Now, I do have one big news item that I'm going to save till after the first break because we got a lot of news to get through. And just to lift the veil, it's a tease. I'm teasing people, right? You got to stick around till after the first break to get this big news item. It involves Star Wars. And, of course, if you went to shaneplays.com and checked out the blog post, then you would get a heads up on what's coming. But for our listeners, stay tuned. for some big Star Wars The Force Awakens news. Now, Steve, I follow the Troll Dens blog.
All right.
So I know that you're a movie buff.
I tend to watch a lot of movies
Yeah,
and
I know
TV shows, too.
So tell me what you think about this. And by the way, everybody listening, all the links for these news items are on the blog post at shaneplays.com. Steve, listen, Godzilla and King Kong will go head-to-head in new shared universe. What do you think about that?
I don't know about this one. The original one was... Oh, it was okay.
Yeah, well,
it was really cool when I was 10.
When you were 10, right?
Right.
You know they had two different endings, right?
No.
In America, King Kong won. And in Japan, Godzilla won. They had two different endings.
Oh, that's funny. Well,
yeah.
It never made any sense to me because the size difference
right.
is so huge.
Well, that's my thing. Now, I love King Kong, and I liked Peter Jackson's King Kong.
Peter
right?
Jackson's King Kong.
But an oversized monkey cannot take Godzilla down.
No,
I'm sorry, it's just not. Zach, what do you think? Zach's just either he doesn't want to get into the conversation or he doesn't think that King Kong can win.
Yeah, there's no way.
But anyway, they're coming out. They're doing a shared universe thing, which is the big rage now. Marvel's done it.
But I do want to say I love Godzilla and I love King Kong.
Yeah, I like them both.
So I'm going to go regardless.
They need to put Godzilla on a diet, though, man, because the new Godzilla was a little chunky.
He's pretty big.
Yeah, he was pretty chunky. But they're doing a King Kong movie called Skull Island.
I heard that.
And then they're doing a sequel to Godzilla, and then in 2020 we get to see Godzilla and the monkey throw down.
That should be interesting.
So we'll see what happens. So this is kind of interesting. People, as fun as games are, there's also a business side. And the Video Game Voice Actors Guild has voted in favor of a strike.
Really?
Yeah. So now what this is they aren't definitely striking, but they voted like overwhelmingly, I think over 90%, to give the union or whatever the right to do a strike if it comes to that. So, people forget. These games are fun and everything, but there's a business side to it.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of people back there working hard, very hard.
And
I can't remember what was their grievance. I remember reading about this.
I'd have to go back and go over the news story. In fact, I've got it right here. So
I can't remember what they were.
I'm sure it was over money, but let's double check that before I put words in anybody's mouth. Let's see. Votes determine whether or not to go on strike due to what the union considers to be unfair compensation and other demands. You're right. So it's probably like, they feel they're overworked and underpaid would be my guess. So, but compensation's definitely there. So that link is on shaneplays.com. I'll tell you, I get a lot of my news from Polygon. They put out some really good news items. So go ahead.
So if I'm overworked and underpaid, can I go on strike?
Well, it depends on if game publishers are unionized or not.
Yeah, but Todd, who works for me, he's always telling me he's going to go on strike. So I put him in charge of the union.
Yeah.
And he's in charge of the negotiations for the management team. So he can talk to himself.
So he can talk to himself.
Figure that all out.
Yeah. And he's like, well, how much budget do I have to work with? Well, that's zero. So whatever you can get out of that. So, and I know there's a huge business side to the role-playing game industry as well. So some of what we were talking about this before the show. Now this will be big news for our console video game player folks. The Nintendo NX, which is going to be the next Nintendo system that they've been, kind of hinting around about. And I don't know if NX is going to be the final name. I think maybe that's their, code name. I'm not sure. But the Wall Street Journal is saying that they've got some information that the system is going to be both a console and a handheld. And so instead of having, like the PlayStation has the PlayStation and then they have the Vita and it's two different systems. Sounds like this is all one big system. And they've had the Game Boy and the DS, but they've never really done a handheld system that is supposed to be kind of comparable to their console. Like the Vita is pretty powerful, right. And can run, it's not just a scaled down, system or something like that. But anyway, and it's also going to have industry leading chips. I just did air quotes there for the people at home. So what that means is I guess they caught some flack over the Wii U, not being as beefy as the new versions of the Xbox and the PlayStation. So this is kind of interesting. The Killing Joke, I don't know if you keep up with any of the DC animated stuff or not.
Not much.
Okay, so of course in the 80s, Alan Moore did this amazing, and I forget who the artist was great too. I can't believe I'm forgetting who the artist is. Did this amazing graphic novel called The Killing Joke, where they told a possible origin of the Joker. It's considered to be, just an amazing graphic novel, whether Batman's in it or not. That's going to be adapted into an animated movie. DC's been releasing a couple of years, but here's the interesting thing: it may be the first one to be R-rated. So,
really?
So you're gonna have a Batman, and I'm conflicted on that.
Yeah.
Right. And then when from what I'm understanding on this, is that they have permission, but they don't have to do an R-rated. Right. Okay. They're just saying we've got the room there if we need to.
If they want to do it.
Now I'm trying to think. I've read The Killing Joke. I own it. I'm not, I'm trying to think, could you tell that story without being R-rated? And I think maybe you could, but I'm not,
Probably.
I'm not I understand they want to tell adult stories. But I'm not a big fan of putting out anything like Batman, Superman, but the kids can't watch, or, maybe that's my bias growing up or something like that. But
it could be, but it also actually hamstrings parents too.
It does.
You can't take your kids to the movies.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
That.
So now, exactly. So this is an animated one, but a lot of people are going to want to watch it. And now they adapted The Dark Knight Returns into that classic Frank Miller from the 80s. Yeah. And that was not R-rated, and so I don't see. Good. Yeah. So, but anyway, now this will kind of blow your mind, Steve. It kind of blows mine. Do you watch Gotham?
Yeah, actually, I'm a late comer to it.
Okay.
I started season 1 about a month ago, and I've been binge watching. I'm on the last 2 episodes of season 1. So.
Well, as you know, the Penguin is a runaway character. He's a great character, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, guess who's going to play his dad? Have you heard this?
I heard this.
Have you heard this, Zach? Pee Wee Herman is going to play the Penguin's dad, right? And so I went and started looking this up. So Paul Rubens is going to play Penguin's dad. I got a little piece of trivia for you as a movie buff, Steve. I went and I was looking this up again today. I never caught this. In Batman Returns, which was the one where you had the Penguin and you had Catwoman.
Okay, this is Danny DeVito's.
Yeah, this is the second Tim Burton movie in like 91, something like that. Yeah. At the beginning, they tell a story where the Penguin is born and he's all horrible, so his parents kind of float him down a stream or something like that.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that.
Paul Rubens played his dad in that.
I did not know.
Yeah,
that.
I was
That's
like,
funny.
yeah. So but he was in the Tim Burton. I don't think he had a big speaking part or anything, but so that's interesting that he's
the circle of life.
The circle of life.
I was taken aback by that announcement, but having seen Mystery Men back in whenever, he did great.
No, he's a good actor.
So,
he'll be good. I'm not going to go into the details, but he's got a little bit of a stigma on him in certain ways. But he's a good actor, and he did good. He was in Tron Legacy. I don't know if you remember that. He was the sort of nightclub owner guy.
I think I missed Tron Legacy. That's the remake, right?
Yeah. Well, it was a sequel. It wasn't a remake. Okay, they kind of followed it up. And then last, before we go to break, Wonder Woman in the comic books is getting a new origin story in advance of Batman versus Superman. So we don't know what the new origin story is. They've retold her origin 2 or 3 times. At first, she was supposed to be shaped from clay that the gods gave life to, and then because she's very steeped in like kind of Greek or Roman mythology, that the Zeus and all them. And then they said, well, no, that was a lie, and really she was the child of Zeus and her mom, and da-da-da. And now they're going to redo it again. So I don't. And they turned the Amazons into bloodthirsty women that would capture sailors and use them to procreate, kill the sailors. Yeah, this is a family show right here.
Yeah, right.
Kill the sailors, and if it was a man-child, they would kill the man-child and keep the women. So that's how the Paradise Island. That was the retold origin, which they're, in my opinion, understandably. Because I'm not real happy about that. But anyway, what are you gonna? It's very mythological, but I'm not sure if I want that to be my Wonder Woman, right? So, all right, I'm gonna tell real quick, folks, remind people about Monsters of Todd that's coming next weekend. Actually, Friday night, October 23rd, and Saturday night, October 24th. Now, October 23rd at 6 p.m. It's going to be in the hangar in the sort of Jacksonville Cabot area. And on the 24th, starting at 4 p.m., it's going to be the Rev Room here in Little Rock. It's to honor my lost friend who passed away about 2 years ago, Todd Mills. A lot of local bands come together, and they raise money not only for his family, but also for the American Cancer Society. So the cover on next Friday night at the hangar out in the Jacksonville area is $10 to get in. At the Rev Room on Saturday night, it'll be $20 to get in. And there's also a costume contest on Saturday night. So what we want to do is, make sure you go to Facebook, just search for Monsters of Todd. You can find out more information about it. I'll be out there Saturday night. I don't. That's not, man. I haven't even been in that scene for years. But these are my friends. I'm honoring a friend of mine. I want to show him love and his family, my friends love. So I'll be out there. Anyway, make sure to search for Monsters of Todd on Facebook to learn more. We're going to go to a break real quick. When we come back, one quick news item, and then it's nothing but Castles and Crusades and Troll Lord Games with Steve Chenault.
Megawars.net. The classic online space strategy game has returned, bigger and better than ever before. Scout the universe and claim your empire. Construct, customize, and launch dozens of different starships. Battle thousands of opponents online in a team-based competition leading to the ultimate battle of the galaxies. Grab your slot today in one of the most hotly anticipated indie games of 2015. Visit megawars.net and get options only available during our pre-sale event running now. Megawars.net.
Privately owned and licensed by the Arkansas State Police, Rock City Alarm Company has been in business since 1996, specializing in sales, installation, servicing, and monitoring of burglar alarms and fire alarms for the state of Arkansas. Rock City Alarm provides service for residential and commercial alarms, and now provides cellular monitoring with remote arm and disarm. Just call John Hardiman at 501-541-8747. That's John Hardiman at 501-541-8747.
JLM Tree Servicing can take care of your tree servicing needs. Contact them at 501-351-7714, online at jlmservicing.com, and on Facebook. Do you have limbs touching the roof or killing your grass with too much shade? Leaves collecting in the pool or gutters? Need to remove that unsightly dead tree? JLM Servicing is insured, provides free estimates, serves all of Central Arkansas, and doesn't collect payment until job well done. JLM Tree Servicing, 501-351-7714. Find them online at jlmservicing.com or on Facebook.
Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/Shane Plays.
Hey, welcome back to Shane Plays Geek Talk Radio, live Geek Talk Radio, a journey into the things we love. If you're listening on 99.5 Faith Talk, you're like, what the heck is Shane Plays doing on 99.5? It's a temporary situation through November 14th, and then we'll be back on our normal station, 96.5 on Saturdays at 1. And then during this time, the show repeats on Sundays on 96.5 at 1 o'clock. So if you're listening to this on Sunday, this is pre-recorded, even though we normally broadcast live. So I said before the break, we got a pretty big news item involving Star Wars. So I'm going to throw that out real quick, and then we're going to get into it with Steve Chenault. I keep saying Steve Chenault.
Either one works.
Yeah, with Troll Lord Games. But before that, Zach, set the tone on the Star Wars announcement here. All right, so there we go. Set the tone. I'll tell you, John Williams knows how to score a movie. Is that
still the single best movie track ever?
Yeah, ever. I even liked. I when it comes to Star Wars, I'm like one of those. Like if you're a football fan and you stick through your team in the hard times and the good ones.
Yeah.
I even stick with the prequels. I defend them on a certain level.
I do too.
Because there are things about them. I thought Revenge of the Sith was, and this is fighting words for some people. I thought it was better than Return of the Jedi. That's just me.
And let me tell you, I had a 4.5 hour long argument with a guy over that because I watched them. They were good movies, enjoyed them, but not until I watched them with my kids and
saw it from their perspective.
Oh my Lord, they loved them. I thought, oh, these are good movies.
When I went to see Attack of the Clones, and Jar Jar pops on for a little while, there was a little 8-year-old kid that went, Daddy, Daddy, Jar Jar.
Yep.
So, maybe Lucas knows what he's doing, folks.
That's how it was when we were 10. It was just cool.
Yeah, but I will say that Phantom Menace, there wasn't a lot of chemistry. It's there were certain flaws with it, but there's the pod race scene, amazing. Oh, yeah. There were lots of, I enjoyed the prequels. And like I said, I love Revenge of the Sith, and the reason I pointed that out is because I thought John Williams, like Duel of the Fates, that that is fantastic music.
He's beyond the.
Yeah, he's the man.
He just broke the mold with Star Wars.
He's the man. Yeah, he did. So do this really quick. I want to make sure to give you plenty of time to talk about Castles and Crusades. So here's the update. Here's the Star Wars update. There's a trailer evidently coming out Monday at 8:30. Eastern time. I don't know if that's coming out online, if it's going to start showing on TV shows or whatever. There's a news article from Polygon that's linked at shaneplays.com on the show notes, and evidently tickets for the Phantom Menace, people for the Force Awakens, which wasn't the Force already awake, but anyway, maybe now that it's in balance, it wakes up. I don't know. Anyway, evidently tickets are going on sale immediately after the trailer comes out Monday night.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's pretty big news.
They'll sell out pretty quick.
The internet's going to crash.
Yeah.
The whole internet is going down in flames. So that's the word on the street.
That's great.
And I don't know, I don't know all the details.
Well, didn't they do their last trailer somewhere special? It only came out on like certain sites or something.
Well, yeah, I know that they previewed it like San Diego Comic-Con or something. Yeah. So, but anyway, folks, if you're a Star Wars fan, and let's face it, who isn't? That evidently Monday night you can start buying your tickets to see it. Yeah, the internet will crash.
It'll be sold out Monday night.
Yeah. So anyway,
no doubt.
All right. So my guest today, who was also bantering with me during the news segment and otherwise, this is Steve Chenault, and he is not only a Little Rock native, so he's a Central Arkanoid like me, and so I wanted him on for two reasons. One, I think it's extremely cool that there's a role-playing game publisher right here in Little Rock. And you guys have been in business for
15 years.
15 years. I know Castles Crusades are y'all on 12 years now?
Yeah, 2005. So, yeah, but 2004 it came out. Yeah, something.
Okay.
11, 12 years. So
yeah.
I can't add well.
Oh, okay. So, and then you also publish Castles and Crusades, which is a very cool fantasy role-playing game.
Right.
So, I wanted to have you on for both those reasons. So, if you would, if you want to tell us a little bit about Troll Lord or Castles, whatever you want to tell us, kind of introduce yourself, and then we can kind of go from there.
Well, we started the companies, three of us, Matt Golden and David Chenault, my brother, and myself, in 1999, actually sitting at Vino's. We had we had beer and pizza there and discussed the whole thing. And it kind of was an offshoot of several things we were all doing. Davis had long since been working on a world, as many gamers.
Is that aired?
That's in Zaya.
Okay.
And my world kind of was sort of hobbled together, but it sprung to life on its own accord when we got into the publishing, sort of through a fluke of pricing. You talk about the business side of things,
right?
But we started it. Mac had done. I guess in 1980 something or the other, I wrote a module called Mortality of Green. I sent it to TSR. It got rejected.
What was the name of it?
Mortality of Green.
Okay.
It got rejected, but not like out of hand. Roger Moore, who was then, I guess, an editor there, had made lots of comments.
Well, that's a good sign. I used to try to get fiction published, and I did here and there. But if you got handwritten notes back from the editor, that's big.
It was big. Good. So that sat there. And then Mac and a friend of his, Chris, had worked on this thing called The Seeker that we distributed at Gen Con, or at Gary Con. No, not at Gary Con, at Dragon Con.
Dragon Con.
And all of these kind of pre-existing elements gave Mac the idea, well, why don't we form a company and try to publish some modules? Now, the original concept for me, I think Mac argues a little bit with me that I just wanted, we were going to switch from going to Dragon Con to Gen Con, and we wanted a way to pay for it. So let's just make these adventures, sell them at the con. And
so you just wanted to cover your costs.
Yeah,
you just wanted a way to cover your costs of going to the con.
That was kind of what I was thinking. Now,
okay.
I think Mac had a little bit longer goal. He had been enmeshed in all of the inside discussions on the creation of the OGL and D20 and the SRD stuff.
Why don't you explain, because I know what that is. And anybody who is playing games in the early to mid 2000s probably knows what that is. But why don't you tell us a little bit about what that is?
Basically, what Wizards of the Coast did in 2000 was they launched the OGL, which is the Open Gaming License, and they took all of their content from their role-playing game Dungeons and Dragons, and made it open. Mechanics you can't copyright, so the whole thing just kind of rolled out there. And the idea was they're going to focus on the core books, the big expensive items, and they could get lots of other publishers to do adventures, settings, what have you. Because these tend to be expensive in that they require a lot of work with less return. The price on an adventure is $8, so you're just going to get less return on it. So they wanted to back out of that and use the OGL.
So they wanted to get out of the making the adventures game. They just wanted to do the core rules,
right? Because that's where you make your bigger profit.
So it's almost like, and this isn't a complete analogy, but it's almost like I'm Apple. I build the mobile operating system for the phone, and then I hope other people start developing apps. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And those apps help drive the whole market, which means people want the Apple. So that's kind of where it comes from.
Okay.
And it worked well for us, of course, and we launched. So we got together with all of these kind of disparate ideas and sat down and cooked up. We pulled Mortality of Green out that I had submitted, and one other book, I think it was either Fantastic Adventure or Davis. It was Davis's Vodka. And we were going to send these to print them, take them to Gen Con and the whole thing. Well, when we got a hold of the publisher, by that time, Mac had wanted to do one, so he wrote Fantastic Adventure. So we had 3 books, and the publisher, the printer, when we got a hold of the printer in Canada, Printy Print and Lithos. Great little printer out of Canada.
Okay.
And this guy said, if you'll do 4 books, we can actually use our plates and cut you a discount. And that's how Aird comes to be. Because Davis hadn't actually, at the time, he was an archaeologist out west, and he didn't have the time. Oh, a little closer.
Well, you can just bring the mic up.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Davis was out west and didn't have time to bring all of his stuff together. So I had all these notes and just, like any gamer does, just mountains of them.
Right.
So I very rapidly hammered together the world of Aird, all my notes, and made it, and we put it into book form, and that launched the company right
So
there.
that is how you say it, Aird.
Aird.
I thought so. Okay. So, like, I see you refer to Aird a lot on the Troll Dens blog, in explaining. And Aird, this guild will do this or something like that.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Aird's really one of our, for a setting, in an industry where settings don't do well, generally. Aird has done extraordinarily well for us. I mean,
But it's not. Is it the default setting of Castles and Crusades?
There really isn't a default setting for Castles and Crusades. If you were to ask me that, I would say yes. This is anything that I write, and I write about half the company's material is going to be in.
Right, and I've got you wrote. I've got Shadows of a Green Sky here that you wrote. That was the free RPG Day giveaway.
Correct.
I've got to ask. Mortality of the Green and Shadows of a Green Sky. Is this the same green that you discuss at the beginning?
Well, I'm not sure what my obsession with green is. It's my favorite color. There's another one, too. I can't remember the name offhand. Another module that's got green in it. And Tim told me to just stop with the green titles.
Enough with the green.
It's enough.
Well, I don't know if maybe there was an underlying...
Well, I run most adventures that I do in a forest called the Darkenfold in the world of Aird. And it's always, it's this deep dark forest type thing. So I think green's always on my head.
Okay. Well, I didn't know if it was almost like in DC Comics, the green now represents almost the primal earth force of something. So I didn't know if there was this underlying story arc, if you will, about the green.
It's just one of those colors that's evocative, I think. That and red are really it. Blue has a little bit, but most colors aren't evocative of something. But green, you immediately kind of conjure things in your head. So.
All right. So... kind of sidetracked you there. Sorry about that.
So, well, at any rate,
you were saying that you write about half of the material, and that Aird.
Yeah, and that's why Aird that's why Aird crops up all the time. That said, it's always been a very good seller for us. I mean, the original Codex of Aird, spelled ERDE. Now that's what we're replacing this month. In fact, it sold extraordinarily well for a setting. So,
well, that's great. I know that you mentioned that there's not really a default setting. A lot of people. Probably, if you were in the 80s playing D&D or late 70s, early 80s, there was no default setting for D&D. It was just sort of generic medieval Tolkien-ish kind of world.
Right.
Now, people have later said, no, it's always been Greyhawk was there. And I said, no.
Not really.
Not really. That was Gary Gygax's world, but that wasn't the default of... And then, of course, Forgotten Realms blew up like a blowing up thing, and it's just gotten ridiculous.
Yeah, and then it does its own line of books for Forgotten Realms.
Right.
I honestly couldn't tell you now if reading T1, The Village of Hamlet, actually in the text of it, is it in Greyhawk? I mean, I know it later was.
Yeah, I don't know.
Greyhawk,
I'd have to go back. You know what the term retcon is, right? I would guess that that's where you change the continuity later.
Oh,
and so no, there was always that way.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
Right. Yeah. So I honestly don't know. I'd have to go look.
Yeah, I can't remember, but I know that when we played in the early days, in the early 70s and early 80s, we didn't get Greyhawk till later.
It was generic Tolkien-ish fantasy world. Right. Is basically what it was. So and that's one cool thing about role playing games and D&D and all these other ones. They've got all these different settings that don't have to be medieval fantasy.
No, not
but
at
it's
all.
Still that to me. I mean, if I'm going to sit down and play a fantasy role-playing game, that's what I'm internally...
We were actually talking about that the other day. We run a Thursday night game, and we're talking about why D&D, the fantasy genre, actually took hold so much better than any of the others did. Now, Warhammer does well, but D&D really, and it's the fantasy side of it. Traveler was okay, Boot Hill was okay, but...
I think it was Tolkien. I mean, that's my opinion. I think we were already... That like most fantasy novels at the time, and it was basically Tolkien derivative in a lot of ways. Most, not all, but you had I guess heroic now you had Conan and that kind of fantasy.
Yeah, we kind of settled on Tolkien. Certainly played a huge part of it, but we kind of settled on it more than any of the other genres. It's the escape from reality.
It really is.
Because science fiction, you can always see bits and pieces of it, and what you're doing, especially today as everything's changed so much. But when you get into fantasy and Magic in particular, I
Right.
mean, this is way beyond.
Yeah, no, I think that's. I mean, it was. Now I can speak from my perspective, and I think a lot of other kids when I was growing up playing, it was an escapist power fantasy.
Yeah.
It was like, hey, I can have this mighty plus whatever hammer and kick down doors,
And you're in control.
and I'm in control.
Right.
Whereas and to be honest, I've said this before. Geeks today don't know how good they got it. They have no clue. We used to catch holy heck for what we liked. I mean, it was like dork, it was like, and it's just be honest, and now it's like, it's chic, and
I remember somewhere during 3rd edition, it was a great, I think it was an advertisement for D&D. I honestly couldn't tell you now, but back in 2002, 2000, whatever, this geeky guy is walking out of a laundromat and he bumps into this beautiful model and he drops his Player's Handbook. I think. And I remember that thinking, good Lord, how far we've come.
How far have we come? But we've got, we can think, I think that Kevin Smith's movies have helped, with his comic books have made geek cool. And then you've got like the Big Bang Theory who have really helped make
they've tapped
gamers and all that stuff. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that comes together.
Yeah, I don't know really. Yeah, somewhere in the aughts, it
just changed, which is cool. Yeah. But yeah, there was a like soldiers in the trenches camaraderie among gamers back in the Oh yeah. So I mean,
I remember we bought Conan #1 in I guess about 1979. I went with my mother to this tiny little basement comic shop.
Yeah.
That you drove up into the guy's driveway and you went down his
Oh,
steps
how
and
funny.
into it. And it had literally swinging lanterns from the ceiling. Everything's dusty. I mean, it was awesome. But you don't see that anymore.
You don't. No,
it's all
really
Mylar
don't.
bags and boxes now. So.
You really don't. Yeah. I don't know if I'm looking. Is like, does that appeal to me through nostalgia?
Yeah, no.
Or was it? There was a. I don't know. Anyway, but so what I'd like to talk a little bit before we go to break, and then when we come back, I want to zero in on Castles and Crusades and what maybe is distinct about it. But can you talk for a couple of minutes about the state of how you see the role-playing game, tabletop role-playing game industry, not computer role-playing game, and like what you're seeing as a publisher right now, what challenges you may have, or what good may be happening right now?
We've had the 2 best years in the company's history in the past 2 years.
That's fantastic.
I mean, so much so that it dwarfs other years, almost doubling the year before in 2000.
That's fantastic.
And 12. So we've seen quite a surge in interest all across the board. And I think a lot of that, because we saw when 4th edition came out, we saw kind of a collapse in the retailer market. And I can go into ad nauseum that if you want me to, but there was quite a collapse in the retail market, particularly on the RPGs. And when retailers
when was it? What time frame was that again?
About the time 4th edition comes out. Now, it starts before that, but when D20 collapses, which is basically the offshoot from the OGL, there were so many publishers out in 2004, 2005, that the whole market kind of caved in on itself. And it was very, very abrupt. I remember talking to a distributor out of Canada at Lion Rampant. He told me that it was like overnight. They were selling books crazy, and then the next week their warehouses were filling up. And, of course, on our end, the publishers, we're still printing in 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 print runs and sending them to the distributors, but they aren't moving them. So suddenly our orders dropped. I mean, it was like falling off a cliff.
Overnight. That's interesting.
It was kind of nuts. And then and that hurt the retail market. And as soon as the retail market stopped buying, it whiplashed back towards us, and it got exasperated when 4th edition came out. And it just didn't do as well, I think, as Wizards of the Coast had hoped, as we all had hoped, because we were hoping it would invigorate everything. And it didn't. And I think that when the distributors stopped ordering from publishers, or when retailers really stopped ordering because they couldn't move the product, of course, this is all hand in hand with the growing internet, because in 2002, the internet's not very big. In 2006, people are getting very comfortable buying at Amazon or wherever. So it all kind of dovetails together, and it collapses in 2005 to 2008, what have you. Retailers stop ordering as much, and as soon as they realize that only 5 or 6 or 8% of their income is coming from RPGs, it's irrelevant at that point. They can invest in more board games, which they did.
Yeah, you've suddenly become very niche.
Very niche, and then we go through this horrible period in the late 2007, 8, 9, where we're just really kind of trying to find, where we're going and what we're doing, and hacking a market out of this niche, which we did fairly well, and we had an aggressive social marketing for TLG. But RPGs continued to suffer, but not until the crowdfunding began. Yeah. That changes it.
You've run several kicks. In fact,
at least 10.
I think I'd always kind of kept hearing about Castles and Crusades, But what really got me looking at Castles and Crusades is when you ran a Kickstarter to reprint your player's handbook,
right.
which I have right here, and I've read through it and been looking through it again. And then I think I've participated in all your Kickstarters in some fashion after that. Now, you were explaining to me that, so obviously the crowdfunding has helped your business.
Correct.
And it's a really good way to minimize risk while still delivering to people what they want, right? So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it basically replaced what we had done before is you would announce a book to the retailer markets, and the retailers who bought deep into RPGs would pre-order these books through distributors, and then the distributors would order a good double of what they had pre-ordered. So you could kind of guarantee before you went to print what you were going to sell off of the pre-orders coming in from distributors.
Right.
Well, when the market collapsed in 05 and 06 and 04, whenever that was, that dried up. So now we're shooting in the dark. We're trying to figure out what we can sell. I remember when we first released Castles Crusades' first printing, I printed deep on it because I knew we had something good here. I knew it was a good game. But my main distributor, Olo Gyatsian of Impressions, he actually only wanted 100 of them because RPGs had tanked so horribly.
Only 100.
He said 100, and I said, dude, you've got to take at least 300. I mean, just if you can't, this isn't worth it.
Yeah,
so
why do I even,
He and I are good friends. He said, yeah, I'll take the risk, and he took them and sold them out in like 6 weeks. So for us, CNC was kind of a saving grace. But the system collapsed. It didn't matter what. We didn't know what we could sell. So then it became a real struggle. We didn't have any kind of pre-order system. But now the crowdfunding has changed that remarkably. We can tell what we're going to do.
Well, right, because like I said, from a business perspective, and a lot of people who participate in Kickstarters to pledge may not realize it, risk in business is huge, and it minimizes risk.
It does, and I don't think that people, they probably are aware of it is when you say it, but RPGs are extremely expensive, from the writing to the editing, the playtesting, the art, the maps, the covers, design, the layout. I mean, it's a lot of stuff, and it's not just like Monopoly when I've got a 4-page rule book.
Right.
I've done it. I got my board. I'm good.
You got to do errata. You got to do
all kinds
multiple
of stuff. And everything's got to be cross-referenced 14 times. And we changed the spell name in the 6th printing of the Player's Handbook. Well, it didn't catch it in the CKG guide, so...
I even saw one instance, and I'm only bringing this up because Troll Lord Games' response to it was extremely professional, where there was a spell guide that came out, and I got it, and then very next day you said, "Hey, we got problems with this, and we're sending you a new one." And so even after you've got
that poor book,
you got. Well, what I'm saying is, it's not like Monopoly, like you put it out and it's done.
Right.
And RPG gamers are passionate. They're like, what
they're passionate, but also if you break something like that one in particular, we had changed the wording for something in the 6th printing. I think the minute and a turn or something.
Right.
But we didn't change it in that elemental spellbook, and someone caught it, and it sounds like he's nitpicking when he sent the email, and I was like, but he's not nitpicking.
He's not, no.
He can't play his game if
because
his rules are broken.
It doesn't sync up, right?
Yeah.
So, all right, well, you're doing some interesting new stuff with Kickstarters, which you said you've had mixed success. Is that, you did a Kickstarter where you said, look, and I participated in this, and you said, look, just, one of the things you're going to do is just get in the Kickstarter at the minimum level,
right?
And then later in the the backer kit kind of stuff, you can choose what you actually want. And I participated in that, and you said you're seeing kind of mixed results.
Well, the idea was on that one that we were seeing about, on the 6th printing of the Player's Handbook, I think we saw about 23% of the material was add-ons, with people just buying other stuff. So we did like 83,000 on that one, and it was good. But 20% of that's like, I don't know, what is it, 30 or 18 or whatever it is. A good chunk was done on through add-ons. Now, add-ons are difficult for us because until we get into each individual order, we can't figure out what the shipping bill is. And the shipping is where Kickstarter will kill you. I mean, to anyone running Kickstarters out there, you've got to get a handle on your shipping before you launch the project. Well, Backer Kit's got a fantastic shipping. It's absolutely fantastic. So we had used it a couple of times, and we thought, okay, well, let's let them not do add-ons here and do the add-ons in the Backer Kit, and then we'll see better. But we saw across the board 80% drop in people buying add-ons.
But see, until you experiment, you don't know.
You don't know,
because you could have had lightning in a bottle and didn't realize it.
Absolutely,
you just don't know.
And it may still be that they wouldn't have bought the add-ons anyways through the Kickstarter. But what we're finding, and I think this is generally true, people will see a Kickstarter, they'll pledge to the Kickstarter. I do this. I've pledged to about 11, and I've never gone back to them. You know,
Right.
to look. I know. I just wait for it to show up.
Right, sure. Yeah, that's
And
what
I think, a lot of people do that. So when they get the backer kit thing, they don't really go back to shop. They just fill out the form.
Right,
and move
fill out
on.
the form and move on. Yeah.
I suspect that's what's happening.
Well, it would be great to spend more time on that because Kickstarters and RPG industry is really intertwined today. But we do got to get a break in. When we come back, I want to talk about Castles and Crusades with the time we have left because I want to make sure people know what's cool about it. And one of our sponsors actually, Steve, is Game Goblins.
Oh, very
And not only, I think one of your guys runs a game
Todd
down there
does on Sunday nights.
On Sunday nights.
Yep.
But I also talked to Josh, who owns it, and he said we carry all the Castles of Crusade hardbacks.
Every bit of it, yes.
So people, if you want to go get your Castles of Crusades, go down to Game Goblins, and I'm about to tell you where they're at and how you can contact them. But they have Castles and Crusades, and you can also order it is it just trolllord.com?
You can order it at trolllord.com. But if you're here in Little Rock or anywhere in Central Arkansas, head to Game Goblins.
Support your friendly local game store.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, but if you have to order, if you don't have it locally, go to trolllord.com, and the links for all of Troll Lord and the Troll Den's blog and their Twitters and all that are up on Shane Plays. So anyway, some goblins are your friends. Game Goblins is Central Arkansas's premier retailer of Magic the Gathering, Warhammer 40K, board games, card games, RPGs, miniatures, and hobby accessories. Call Game Goblins at 501-224-GAME or visit them online at gamegoblins.com. Conveniently located at 1121 South Bowman, right on the corner of Bowman and Canis in West Little Rock, and staffed by friendly employees, Game Goblins has expanded their store size, and there's plenty of room for exciting inventory and tables for play space. You'll like that space because Game Goblins has gaming events every day of the week, and as we just mentioned, on Sunday nights, you can go there and play Castles and Crusades with Troll Lord's very own Todd. For all your gaming needs, I heartily recommend Game Goblins. Make sure to check out their customer loyalty program that rewards you based on your actual purchases. Game Goblins earns your business and keeps it. First-time customers, mention Shane Plays and receive $10 off your purchase of $50 or more. Call Game Goblins at 501-224-GAME or visit them online at gamegoblins.com. Tell them Shane Plays sent you. All right, Zach, go ahead and take us to a break.
Comic book lovers, Michael Tierney's local comic book stores meet all of your comic book needs with friendly service. Visit the comic book store on Treasure Hill Road in Little Rock or Collector's Edition on JFK Boulevard in North Little Rock. And don't forget to click on over to the wildstars.com website. I personally have been a customer of Michael's since the mid-'80s, and I trust him for my reserve list still today. Michael knows comics. In addition to being in business for 34 years, he has written multiple columns for comic magazines, is an Overstreet price guide advisor, and publishes his own comic book series, The Wild Stars. Trust me, these stores are run by a comic book lover for comic book lovers. Remember, for all of your comic book needs with friendly service and to get your copies of The Wild Stars, make sure to visit the comic book store on Treasure Hill Road in Little Rock or Collector's Edition on JFK Boulevard in North Little Rock, and visit thewildstars.com to learn more.
Chapman Service is offering for a limited time up to $1,000 trade-in on your old heating system, or 0% financing for up to 72 months on a new Train comfort system. Call for your free personal estimate. Do it today. Chapman Service. All you want in a heating air conditioning company and nothing you don't.
Did you know that your business can provide its employees with the same benefits packages as even the largest Fortune 500 companies, often at no direct cost to you, the business owner, and while saving money at the same time? If you've always thought that you would like to offer those big company benefits to your employees but thought that there was no way, let our team at the Macomb Teague Agency come by and show you how it can be possible and how simple it is to put into place. We offer major medical and group and individual plans, on or off exchange, dental and vision, life products, cancer, accident, and more. These benefits create that ever so priceless commodity known as loyalty. And yes, we are ACA certified. We even offer these same benefits on the individual basis if you're just a one-person entrepreneur or making things happen on your own. Give us a call today at 501-838-6827 to schedule your no-obligation on-site consultation. The Macomb Teague Agency is serving all of Arkansas and surrounding states. 501-838-6827. Give us 1% of your trust, and we'll earn the other 99.
Hey, welcome back to Shane Plays, Geek Talk Radio out of Little Rock, and also, of course, we go out as a podcast and on KryptonRadio.com. If you're hearing us on 99.5 Faith Talk, it's a temporary arrangement due to Ouachita Baptist football through November 14th, and we also play pre-recorded on Sundays on our normal station, 96.5 FM at 1 o'clock. So if you're listening to this on Sunday, don't call in or try to tweet or anything like that because it is pre-recorded. We got just a few minutes, and until radio goes fast, Steve. You blink and it's over.
Wow.
But we've got 5, 6, maybe 7 minutes, and I want to talk about Castles and Crusades.
Okay.
So what Castles and Crusades is now, Troll Lord Games, which is here out of Little Rock, you publish more than Castles and Crusades, but I would say Castles and Crusades is your flagship product.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so you also do, is it Amazing Adventures?
We do Amazing Adventures, which is built on the Siege engine, which is the same mechanic that runs Castles and Crusades.
Right, so right here, the Siege engine is
correct.
Right. And I took this directly from your website, so if this is wrong, feel free. But I've got Troll Lord Games publishes Castles and Crusades, which is a rules-light adaptable game that has stood the test of time, 12 years in constant publication with no new additions.
Correct.
Castles and Crusades is the original easy-to-play attribute check system. Join us and unleash your imagination. And as you've been saying to a somewhat well-known game, you said, welcome to the attribute train for doing attribute checks. So,
well, they did kind of follow our lead on that. I mean, we came out with CNC in 2005. I think.
Right.
It might be 2004. I can't remember now. I think it was December 2004 we released the white box, and that was the Siege engine. That's the attribute check system. And it's not changed a bit since its release in 2004, which is unusual for role-playing games. One of the things we do, we follow Gary Gygax's original concept that you don't create new additions for the game. You might refine it, and there's some refinements have occurred. We changed some from 4th to 5th printing, I think.
Right.
Changed the Barbarian and a little bit on the
but you don't change the overall system.
System has stayed the same.
Because what you're kind of saying with that is your previous editions.
Well, you cut your customer base in half, and now you got people that need this supported and this supported, and it just makes it far more difficult.
Well, now, sometimes a new edition will make a game better. But,
it can,
correct. But sometimes it can make it
But we
worse.
didn't need that.
Yeah. Well, I guess what I'm saying is, but
absolutely.
You're also kind of saying our previous version wasn't as good as it needed to be, which, and I could still happily play first edition AD&D today.
When I play Dungeons & Dragons, it is actually Advanced Dungeons & Dragons.
Right. So
I don't even call it first edition because in those days it was Advanced Dungeons &
Dragons. Yeah, it was
just
AD&D, right?
Right.
Yeah. And, I guess the cynical part of me thinks that larger publishers put out new editions to sell more product. Sure. Right? And it makes it a marketing event and a hype event and all that. But anyway, so what is unique? Let's say I was playing the 5th edition of the big guy out there right now. What if I sat down and played Castles and Crusades? There's some similarities, but what am I going to find different that's cool?
I've not played 5th edition much, so I can't say.
So let's say 3rd edition.
So, to 3rd edition, there's a lot different.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, Castles Crusades is so very, very simple, and it's kind of built around the castle keeper, our game master, deciding what's going on, and then using the attribute check system to resolve any conflict that comes up. And what that allows is, one, the storytelling aspect lands firmly behind the screen with the CK. So he's kind of governed. He doesn't have to worry about debating rules or what does this or the dice kind of governing what's going on. The dice are kind of superfluous to what we're doing. You definitely need dice.
You need dice, but
it's really the story arc and what you want to happen in the adventure, however it plays out. And what's nice about this, and it takes people. There's a learning curve to a game so simple. There's a surprisingly large learning curve coming from games that are complex.
Right.
Players.
It's like you have to unlearn.
You have to unlearn. So
okay.
Players. That's a great way of putting it. Players. Probably 1 or 2 games new to it. They come to the realization, oh, holy Christmas, I can do anything I want.
Right.
I don't need to wait to check
like,
my skill or feat or something
like
like that.
Give me an example of that.
Well, I've seen it a dozen times, of course, but when my son, Pete, was playing, he's a big video game player. And I can't remember exactly what he was doing. It had something to do with bringing a tree down, cutting a tree down. And it hit him when he cut the tree down, and it caused some kind of noise. There was a giant encounter. I don't know, it was a big mess. But then it hit him that there's no restrictions. Anything he wants to do, he can try. Climb the tree, get under the tree. Wait, that actually reminds me. I got a fantastic example.
Okay,
this will be the most ridiculous thing you've heard, but it was the greatest moment I had at a con game. So I'm running these guys. Right. The whole thing was to cross a river, and getting across the river was going to be tough. And half of them didn't swim, so they were going to have to make dex checks. And Some of them I'd have make intelligence checks because I wanted them to not drown, so I let the swimming be an intelligence check instead of a dexterity check.
So the castle keeper decides,
He
instead of
decides
saying
all
what's
of
your
it.
skill in this and that and the other, you say,
Absolutely.
this is going to be a constitution check.
Whatever. Now,
Okay,
in the rules, there's some very light guidelines that, like, poison is a constitution check. But if you don't want it to be, don't make it a constitution check. If you want that wizard to have a better chance to succeed, make it an intelligence check. 'Cause that's going to be his primary attribute, and he's going to win.
Okay.
But anyway, so these two guys, to get across the river, they cut a tree down because they couldn't swim, and they were dwarven brothers and brothers in real life. Both went on, actually, to serve in the Iraq War.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, great guys. They they tied themselves together and looped the rope over the log of the tree they had cut down and pushed the log off into the river and put the rest of the party on the log, using themselves as ballast.
Right.
So if the log began to shift, one would shift.
That's
a little
very
bit.
imaginative.
It was very
yeah.
imaginative. Would it work? Probably
knows?
no way.
But it's a game,
But it
right?
was
It's
awesome.
for fun.
Yeah, it was awesome.
So you employed the rule of cool and said,
absolutely,
yeah.
and they got to roll. They rolled a dozen attribute checks to make all of this happen. And
Right.
they're using
Right.
rules mechanics to make it happen. And on my end, I'm kind of governing the way it's going to play out.
Right.
Because it was such a cool concept. It was just so hilarious. It
So-
was just awesome.
And unfortunately, we're already running out of time. But Castles of Crusades is, if you like fantasy gaming, you've got your hit points.
It's all there. If you
decks,
play
yeah.
any other fantasy game, Dungeons & Dragons, Pathfinder, any of
Right.
it, everything you see in Castles and Crusades, you're already familiar with.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, if I will get to play, but when I get to play, I'm making a knight because I love that there's a knight.
The knights are cool.
Character class in there, and you got an illusionist.
Yep.
Now, did you call? Hold on, is it a thief or a rogue?
It is a rogue.
Is it a rogue?
We
Okay.
went with the newer
Did
name.
you go
for
with the rogue?
It
All right.
caused Gary Gygax much annoyance when we did this, because when we
Yeah.
originally did CNC, part of the reason was to give him a vehicle to do Castle Zagyg under.
Right.
And he wanted the rogue to be called a thief, and he and I bantered about that quite a
Okay.
bit.
Well, and that was another thing we didn't even get a chance to get into. Maybe I can have you on again. You'd be welcome to
Sure,
come back
that'd be
on.
great.
Is you've done some work with Gary Gygax and published some of his stuff.
We were his primary publisher from 2001 to the point
right.
of
So
his
the
passing.
the pedigree of Troll Lords is no. I mean, not only are you producing good stuff, but you've worked with basically one of the fathers of the role playing
absolutely.
genre.
And he was
so.
a huge influence and guide in what we did in the early days. In
All
fact,
right.
when he passed away in 2008, I didn't know if I would keep going on.
Wow,
It
that's huge.
it was huge.
Okay, well, I got to wrap us up. Folks, thanks so much for joining us. Next week, we're going to have Ed Greenwood. He's got the Ed Greenwood Group now, and he's publishing a new series of books called Helmaw, and he's got some other fantasy books coming out after that. Don't forget, you can catch us on Krypton Radio, kryptonradio.com. And just thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week right here on Geek Talk Radio, a journey into things we love. Shane plays. Steve, thanks so much for being
Thanks
with us.
for having me.
Mhm.